From Lando Norris almost hitting a man at the Miami GP to Pierre Gasly nearly colliding with a tractor at the Japanese Grand Prix, these are all the biggest F1 near misses involving fans. For starters, recently F1 footage emerged as Lando Norris almost hit a man in the pit lane at the Miami GP. As you'd expect, Formula One came under fire for their pit lane safety standards. And, I mean, it's totally deserved if you ask me. It's unbelievable something like this could even happen. So, here's how it went down. During the Miami Grand Prix, Norris narrowly missed hitting a pedestrian who was walking across the pit lane entrance. Thank goodness Norris had quick reflexes, or we could be talking about a real tragedy here. And not only this, when questioned about the incident, an F1 spokesperson pointed the finger at the FIA, saying they are responsible for pit lane operations during a Grand Prix. But wait, it gets worse. Just a week earlier, before the incident, FIA made another blunder. This was when they allowed a group of photographers into Parc Fermé before the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was over. I mean, it's obvious that this should be completely unacceptable. It's a miracle no one was seriously injured when Esteban Ocon had to dodge people who were in the pit lane after making a strategy gamble and not stopping for a pit. Formula One needs to take a long, hard look at their safety protocols before something truly catastrophic happens. To be fair, it does seem like things are getting serious in the world of Formula One. The FIA is backpedaling after a dangerously close call during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and their response isn't exactly inspiring confidence. They claim to regret what happened and vowed to make improvements, but let's be real, it's too little too late. The steward's note reads like a bad joke. They acknowledge that it's common practice to allow certain people into the pit lane before the end of a race, but they failed to take responsibility for what happened. Sure, they're lucky that no one was seriously hurt, but it's only a matter of time before a tragedy occurs. Esteban, who narrowly avoided hitting people in the pit lane during the race, knows this all too well. And that's not even the only incident of something like this happening. Just recently, the Australian GP safety came under fire. This was after an F1 fan was hit by debris, and others invaded the track. As you'd expect, people blamed the management for their poor safety protocols. Now I know what you're wondering. Just what happened this time? Turns out debris from Kevin Magnussen's car hit Will Sweet, who was watching the race with his fiancée from a packed hill near Turn 2. Will suffered a cut to his arm because of it. He stated that if the debris had hit his fiancée, it could have caused a severe head injury. He also reported that no race officials came to assist him, leaving him bleeding and shocked. So you've just got to wonder where the F1 officials were. The incident raises serious questions about the organizers' safety measures, and some fans are even wondering just who'd be liable in such a situation. Turns out organizers, participants, and venue owners can be held liable for injuries or wrongful deaths if they are found to have been negligent. There's this thing called the baseball rule, which is a legal concept that limits the duties of sporting venues to protect spectators. But courts may side with injured spectators if they can prove that their safety was ignored. Like in the case of the Indianapolis 500 fatality, the court found that the competing teams and the facilities had failed to provide proper spectator protection, though there's a ton of legal aspects involved in the final decision. The court will consider a number of factors. This includes whether the spectator was aware of the risks of attending the event, whether the venue could have taken additional measures to protect spectators at a reasonable cost, and if the danger was obvious enough that the venue's owner didn't feel they had an obligation to protect spectators. That said, fans who get injured in motorsports events can receive compensation for their medical expenses, lost wages, and other damages. But that's no reason to run towards danger, especially because incidents like the ones that happened at the Australian GP are becoming all too common. To make matters worse, race officials at the event faced further criticism as a large number of fans invaded the track near the end of the race. I can't help but wonder what the fans were even doing there. Just a single hit from an F1 car, and they'd turn into literal meatballs. Videos on social media showed fans climbing trackside barriers and reaching the car driven by Haas's Nico Hülkenberg as it was parked at the exit of Turn 2. The FIA stewards ordered the Australian Grand Prix Corporation to urgently produce a remediation plan. This plan would act as a response to the security and safety failures that put the fans and drivers at significant risk. The AGPC fronted stewards and admitted to the safety and security failures, agreeing that the whole situation was a dumpster fire that could have easily turned into a much bigger disaster. The incident has led stewards to refer the matter to the governing body's World Motorsports Council to determine whether penalties should be applied. side. And honestly, I think it's high time some strict action was taken, because let's not forget the time when some Formula E protesters jumped onto the hot track. This shocking scene unfolded in Berlin as climate activists put themselves and drivers at risk during the Formula E race. This isn't the first time climate activists have done such radical demonstrations, and well, despite their message, you've got to agree that it puts everyone's life in danger. The group, going by the name Let's Degeneration, staged the dangerous protest by infiltrating the hot track and storming the grid. Video footage showed them as they scaled a catch fence and sat directly on the grid while cars were still warming up. This caused a brief delay to the start of the race. Not only did they cause issues for everyone, but there's some serious security risks involved here, not just for the protesters, but even the drivers and officials on the tracks. And sure, the group claims to have been raising awareness for climate change, but I don't see how anyone's going to be supportive of their case if their actions lead to injuries, or even worse, the deaths of innocent people. But this incident wasn't the first of its kind, because the British Grand Prix was also disrupted by a dangerous protest by the Just Stop Oil group. Can you imagine the sheer terror that must have gone through the drivers' minds when they spotted people on the live track? It was pure chaos. As marshals dragged the protesters away, the race had to be red flagged due to an unrelated crash, causing a delay of over 50 minutes. The Northamptonshire police confirmed 7 arrests had been made, but the damage had already been done. The incident was a serious safety risk that put both the drivers and protesters in harm's way. Formula One CEO Stefano Domenicali was rightfully furious, labeling the protest as totally irresponsible and ridiculous. It was another case of people going way too far and turning their beliefs into something that can cause others harm. And it seems that the prosecutors didn't exactly let them go with a warning either. Their actions were so dangerous that prosecutors claimed they risked causing serious harm to the drivers. And get this, the group claimed that they had assessed the risk, so they knew that nothing major would happen. But I kinda don't think it's that easy to predict how a car moving at a lightning-fast speed is gonna end up going, right? The judge presiding over the case, Neil Garnham, wasn't impressed with the protesters' supposed expertise in assessing risk. He slammed them and called their actions irresponsible. The group's reason for the protest was their belief in the climate emergency, but Judge Garnham begged to differ. Following the trial, 3 of the defendants received suspended prison terms, and the other 3 were given community orders. Not a good look for climate activists. And if you think you've heard the last of it, wait till you hear this next bit. Turns out, people are fuming and calling for the FIA to be investigated. This was after Pierre Gasly narrowly avoids a life-threatening crash with a tractor. So this utterly bizarre incident took place at the Japanese Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon lost control of their cars and crashed due to how wet the conditions were. There was also limited visibility, so the drivers were told to make their way back to the pit lane. So while Pierre was back at the grid during all of this, and almost got hit by a tractor that was making its way to the track. This was to collect Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. Gasly wasn't having it, and he dialed straight to his team radio to vent out a bit of his frustration. The guy pretty much said, why in the world there was a tractor on the track? He told his team to remember what had happened because it's pretty unacceptable. Fans agreed with Gasly, with many of them taking to social media and rightfully calling out the FIA. Many fans felt like they haven't learned a thing from the fatal accident of Jules Bianchi, and they're kind of right. So, from Pierre Gasly nearly colliding with a tractor at the Japanese Grand Prix to Lando Norris almost hitting a man at the Miami GP, those were all the biggest F1 near misses involving fans.